through a checklist to ensure that the meeting we are holding is in compliance with the right to know law. I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04 and its extensions, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. In accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are providing public access to this meeting by telephone, with additional access possible by video and other electronic means. We are utilizing Zoom for this electronic meeting. All members of the committee and selected legislative staff have the ability to communicate contemporaneously in this meeting through this platform. And the public has access to contemporaneously watch and or listen to the meeting on Zoom, YouTube, and via phone by following the directions and links provided on the General Court website. We've provided public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting in the Senate calendar. We are providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anyone has a problem, please email remotesenate@ledge.state.nh.us or call 603-271-3043. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting, it will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting shall be done through roll call vote. Finally, let's start the meeting by taking attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state where you are located and if anyone else is in the room with you during this meeting, which is a requirement under the right to know law. I'm Representative Erica Connors, and I'm located in my home office in Manchester, New Hampshire, and I am alone. Senator D'Alessandro.
I'm Senator Lou D'Alessandro. I'm located in Manchester in my home, and my wife is with me.
Representative Pearson.
I'm Representative Pearson from Derry. I am in my home with my two pugs, Otis and Cricket, that are not wanting to behave right now.
And Representative Josephson, sorry. Representative Josephson, it doesn't sound like your audio is working.
How's that?
That's better.
Can you hear me now? All right, there we go with my mute button. Yes, Representative Josephson, I am in Lebanon, New Hampshire at Lucky's Coffee Garage. There are currently 6 other employees in the other room with me, or in the other room, so.
Wonderful. All right, next on the agenda, we have the approval of the minutes of our October 22nd, 2020 meeting. Are we all in favor? Representative D'Alessandro?
Yes.
Okay, Representative Pearson? Representative Pearson, your audio is off.
No, I'm not. There's one thing I would like to add to the minutes. It was a sentence made by Mr. Hatfield, and it would be included on page 6 in the 5th paragraph. He made the statement that yes, you would develop a bond with others in the house, but I wouldn't leave my wallet on the counter. I think that statement was in part into the way we were discussing the definition of family. And I think that is a critical piece of the way he described the relationship there. And I would just like his quote added to that. And I can email that to Deb if that would be easier for you. But
Deb, can that be added into those minutes?
Yes, but Representative Pearson, why don't you just email it to me anyway? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'll email it to you. Sure.
I'll revise the minutes and send them out.
Other than that, they're great.
Okay, no problem.
Deb, do we need to continue with the roll call vote on that, or should we just pass for now and go back to it at another time?
No, I mean, we can still accept the minutes as amended.
Okay. All right. So then the new proposal is to accept the minutes as amended by Representative Pearson, and we'll just start again for clarity. Representative D'Alessandro?
Yes, as amended.
Representative Pearson?
Yes, as amended.
Representative Josephson?
Yes, as amended.
And Representative Connors is yes, as amended. Okay, next on our agenda is adoption of final recommendations. We have a that was put together by Deb just based on information that we've heard from different stakeholders throughout the process, but now we need to put together our final recommendations for the House and Senate leadership as well. Do we have any recommendations from the members of this committee after having looked through all the documents we've been provided and after having listened to all the stakeholders? Okay, Representative Josephson, did you wish to speak?
Sure. You know, I've just kind of been mulling this over in my head for the last few days or since our last meeting, and I think it's a tricky balancing act between finding appropriate legislation that allows for any sort of protections while also being wary of like Fair Housing Act. And so I've been wrestling with that. Like, how do you thread that needle of getting, you know, protections? I think the certification which we have now is a good method. I don't know. I'm just kind of riffing here. But yeah, that was what really concerned me, because I understand like the complications of fire safety and stuff, but also at the same time, maybe legislation should be added to clarify that these types of homes shall be subject to whatever you know, zoning is in that area and nothing extraneous. I'm not sure.
Okay, I do have one recommendation, unless Representative Pearson, did you want to speak first?
Well, I was, you know, one of the things that we've obviously bounced around here quite a bit, you know, involves exactly what our colleague here just touched on, is that balance. And, you know, one of the things that was emailed to us, the 7-page document that talked about fair housing and some of the HUD requirements, you know, that it had some statements in there that I thought were important and interesting in reference to that, because it said on page 6, the great majority of group homes for persons with disabilities are subject to state regulations intended to protect health and safety of their residents. The Department of Justice and HUD believe, as do responsible operators, that such licensing schemes are necessary and legitimate. And then it goes on to say the issue involves using those practices to mask a discriminatory act. And of course, that's where you get the case-by-case arguments, and you get the, you know, the various discussions as to, you know, what are they doing for us that they're not doing for others. But clearly, this is not weaponizing fair housing and HUD to basically say, well, we're just gonna, you know, we don't want any rules, any regulations, I think is a misuse of that. So, you know, I agree that there needs to be a balance here. And clearly in reading all of that, the purpose of fair housing was to prevent discrimination for these places to exist. And I don't think any of us here are saying, we don't want these. I don't want a recovery house. I don't think that's the issue at all here. I think the issue here is that we recognize the value of these, but at the same time, we have a responsibility as the state with most things, is to protect those that really can't protect themselves. So I like Representative Josephson's idea as far as the certification goes, but I think we have an opportunity here to add a couple things maybe to that really kind of solidify, you know, their expert concerns as, and I talk with my hands and you can't see it, sorry, but as, you know, as an organization whose primary mission is recovery houses. So in no way am I dismissing their expertise, but I just think that we have other experts and other stakeholders within New Hampshire, especially within the fire marshal's office, that want to just add a little bit to that. And I don't know if that means that the legislation you would say, okay, you know, we're going to recognize New Hampshire Core as a certification or as a certifying body, but we're going to add a couple things to that in order for that certification to be a New Hampshire state certification.
Okay. This is not my thought on it. New Hampshire Core has just started that certification process with the state and creating their list online. So I think that is definitely a good first step. But we do still have the concerns of the places that are not following that regulation. And the biggest problem that we're seeing is that definition of family does not exist. And it doesn't look like we're going to get a clear definition of family. So I was considering the option of taking a different approach and creating in legislation what a definition of recovery housing is, and state in there that recovery housing is a group of people living in as a family to support recovery, and give X, Y, and Z as what recovery housing is. And then possibly going back to that piece of legislation that was introduced last term with the fire safety code. And then if somebody says, okay, well, I need a variance, and if they go to the state for this variance, then the state can say, okay, well, are you actually a recovery house? Because you don't meet this definition. And if they don't meet that definition, then my thought is that they should be subject to standard building code for boarding and rooming houses or wherever their numbers qualify. But if they are actually a recovery house and that they are meeting this definition of what we define recovery housing to be, then they would then be allowed to have that possibility of the variance by the state. I don't know if that makes sense to you folks, or if you have other thoughts on that.
Completely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I like that. I think that's a good way of doing that. You know, because that way you have the groups, it defines it, it's set, like this is what a recovery house is, and it meets these requirements, as long as we're not stepping on any toes of like fair housing and stuff, you know, that, because that is our concern. But I think that might be the best approach. I like that.
Yeah, the National Council, Deb had emailed us a document from the National Council of Behavioral Health, and they had given a couple examples of definitions that have worked in other places. And they specifically talk about having peer support and things like that in place. And I think that the places that are calling themselves recovery housing that really aren't doing that are not providing a safe environment. They're not doing peer support. They're not actually a recovery house. So I think if we define recovery house, we'll be in a much better standing, and that will be really helpful for our local and state officials to move forward. Thoughts, Senator D'Alessandro? Did you have any thoughts on that, or?
No, I don't think we should use the word family. I think living together, you know, family has one connotation. If you're talking about a nuclear family, and I'm not sure that that's the way it should be. It's people living together to provide an environment where that's conducive to sober living. I like that. I like that a little bit better, but I defer to the group of experts.
Okay. So, I mean, at this point, we can still go through other recommendations as well, but my first recommendation would be to continue to work with DHHS on New Hampshire Core and the national organization on the voluntary certification process, because that seems to be just starting out, and I think that might be a good way to go. And then the second one would be to propose legislation that would allow us to define recovery housing and create a process through the state if somebody needs to apply for some sort of exception there for fire and safety codes. Do we have any other recommendations that you would like to see move forward? Nothing right now?
Well, I think I think you're absolutely correct, Representative Connors, in that you know, we've the base foundation of all of this really does need to be the definition of what a recovery house actually is, and that I think also will prevent those that misuse that to try to mask a boarding house and just say, oh well, it's a recovery house, so leave us alone, you know. And that's, you know, those that are legitimate in this enterprise should not have any sort of opposition to something like that. I mean, that's, you know, I suppose there'll be you know, when we have a committee hearing on the bill, there'll be a lot of folks that will want their input as far as what exactly that definition of recovery house is. But clearly, without a definition, we don't have a foundation here to do anything past that. So absolutely, absolutely, a definition of recovery house should be employed here. And then, like I said, I think New Hampshire make, you know, if we're tying certification into eligibility for funding and that type of thing, then you know, then I think we should have a say in what that certification, what the definition of a certified location is. So, you know, taking, like I said, taking New Hampshire Corps or NAR's, you know, their lead here and tweaking it for New Hampshire, to me would be the win-win here, ultimately.
So would you suggest changing the legislation that's just been put in place for that standard, or are you just saying to keep examining that moving forward to make sure?
Well, you know, the state fire marshal was pretty comfortable with 311. So, you know, let's revisit that and say, okay, you know, what within that document is reasonable and meets the intent here, and it doesn't really have a clash with fair housing. You know, as we've discussed in prior meetings here, you know, there's certain things that all homes are required to do, not just recovery houses. So, you know, we have a kind of a baseline already when we transfer property or when we build septic or whatever else goes on. But that's not a discriminatory act towards an individual group of people, because it's carte blanche across the entire housing industry. So, you know, let's just we can dive into the requirements that were put forth in 311. And if we do have something that really does seem to be an undue burden that's specifically targeting recovery, then we can investigate that. But for the most part, reading through that, it's really not, it's not that. These are very basic and minimum standards. So,
Right.
So that would be the route I would go.
Yeah, we're not looking at huge expenses in that original bill of sprinkler systems and things that would be, you know, onerous. So, okay. So those are a couple recommendations we have. Do we have anything else we want to add moving forward? Representative Josephson?
Yeah, I just had a thought, and this is more of an exploration, really. But look at the possibility of do we want penalties for those bad actors who start a fake recovery house? You know, like you said, like they're just running a boarding house and then say, "Oh, we're a recovery house," so they can get out of those requirements. I don't know. We didn't really talk about that a lot, but I wonder if that is an avenue to explore for future legislation. And I'm not sure if that would deter people, you know, who would open something like that and kind of push them towards the certification. Like I said, just kind of exploring that idea, possibly.
Yeah, I think that's something we could definitely look at further down the road. Yeah. You know, I do think that the penalty of not following those type of regulations would mean that no, you are in fact a boarding house, and that you do have to then follow those fire safety codes, or you will be shut down.
True.
So I think that is an incentive to actually become certified as well, and to follow safety code. You know, we want to be careful that we're not making hundreds of people homeless in the same.
Of course.
So, all right. Anything else to add at this point? All right. Those look like solid recommendations, and, you know, pending this upcoming election next week, we can figure out who wants to put forward the legislation and whose names want to be on exact wording for that moving forward. Deb, Sonia, is there anything else that we're missing at this point in time?
I have a couple questions. I will develop the minutes and then sort of formulate these recommendations into a final report and get them to committee members tomorrow. You need to let me know if you want me to sign off on the report or if you want to do it electronically. The report's due Sunday, so I either need to get it sent out tomorrow or Monday at the latest. So
okay.
If you committee members could let me know that. And if you have any changes, just get back to me as soon as possible with any changes in the final report.
Okay, so we can email that right back to you once you send out that report to us. Is that the best way?
That is correct. Yep.
All right, is there anything else you need to add?
Nope.
All right, well,
I'm good.
That was short and sweet. All right, thank you everybody for your time, and we'll just stay in communication moving forward, and best of luck with the elections next week. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Senator D'Alessandro, seconded by Representative Josephson. Senator D'Alessandro,
Yes.
Representative Pearson,
Yes.
Representative Josephson,
Yes.
Representative Connors is a yes. Thank you all for your time. We are adjourned. Thank you, Deb. Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Hey, Sonia, could you hang on for a few minutes?
Can I call you?
Yeah, yes.